Hi, all. Welcome back to Walk with Neil, where you join me on my daily walk here in Brooklyn, and we talk about technology leadership and strategy from a business first point of view. I'm Neil Bay. As a fractional or full time CTO, I help businesses not just fix today's bottlenecks, but architect the right foundation for tomorrow's opportunities. Today, everyone's talking about AI, and while it's an exciting time for innovation, great technology leadership isn't really just about chasing trends. As anyone in tech leadership will say, it's also about making foundational choices that set your company up for speed, flexibility, and scale. One of those choices, not one you might hear often about, is optimizing how your applications talk to one another. If you're a forward-thinking founder, business leader, or even a tech-curious executive trying to understand the options to make your system scale, this video is for you. In that vein, I want to talk about something called GraphQL and why it might be a smarter, more scalable way forward for your tech ecosystem. Now, don't run away yet. This isn't a super techie talk, and if I've made it easy for you to get, I've done my job. Now, let's say you open an app, whether you're ordering food, checking your bank account, or shopping online. The app usually doesn't magically hold all the data itself there on your phone or computer. Instead, it reaches out to other systems to pull in the information it needs. This communication happens often through something called an API, also known as a REST API. And it's been the dominant standard for years of how systems pass data to each other. You can think of it like placing an order at a restaurant. You order something from the menu, and then the kitchen cooks it and sends it back to you. Like an order-based kitchen with APIs, you make a request to a specific address, and you get back a prepackaged set of information. Building upon the restaurant analogy, you ask Chef John for a turkey sandwich, but only Chef John can make that sandwich and give it to you. If you want a pizza, you have to ask Chef Beth. You can't go to Chef John for a pizza. If you want a croissant, you have to ask Chef Matt, but you have to ask in French. So you can start to see a scaling problem here in my imaginary restaurant. As the menu grows and the number of chefs grow, it becomes a nightmare for your waiter to manage all those rules about who to go to for what. That's exactly what happens with REST APIs as your system scales. With REST, your app, especially the front end, needs to know exactly where to go for different pieces of data, how to structure the request properly, and what limited set of data it can expect to get back. And as your app grows, so does the possibility of a growing maintenance mess. Backend developers have to manage a constantly expanding inventory of APIs and schemas, meaning what the API does and how to make the request. They have to keep that documentation updated all the time. Every time a front-end developer needs new information, it usually triggers a lot of back and forth as APIs change or new ones are needed. Meanwhile, front-end developers are stuck digging through endless documentation, trying to figure out what APIs even exist, what they return, and how to call them correctly. You can see how it can result in a slower, frustrating process. It creates coordination friction between teams, and it gets worse the bigger you get with your app. Now, you might finally ask, Neil, how does GraphQL help here? Instead of multiple rigid predefined API endpoints, you have one flexible GraphQL endpoint where your app can ask for exactly the data it needs, nothing more, nothing less. It's like having a single multi-purpose chef. From a developer's point of view, it's a huge level unlock. It eliminates all the coordination friction I mentioned before. As long as GraphQL is set up to the data source correctly that is needed by your app or website, the front end simply describes the data their page or app needs, and GraphQL serves it up cleanly. Now, don't get me wrong. There are still times when front-end and back-end teams will need to coordinate, even in GraphQL, but that coordination happens way less often, and it's way more efficient when it does. Even more powerful is that the single GraphQL endpoint isn't just pulling from one system, it can stitch together data from multiple systems behind the scenes. Let's say you want to show a user's recent purchases from your e-commerce database, their profile information from your CRM, and their shipment tracking from a logistics partner. With REST APIs, you'd typically have to call 3 different APIs separately, and you'd have to write extra back-end code to piece the responses together before sending them to the front end in the format they need. So with GraphQL, your app makes one request and the GraphQL server does all the stitching for you behind the scenes, pulling from multiple sources, and it delivers one clean combined response. Also, in a GraphQL scenario, because your front end isn't directly connected to all your backends, it's only connected to them through GraphQL. Backend migrations, or even an effort like breaking up a monolith behind GraphQL, becomes a whole lot easier. So what does this actually mean for your company? It means fewer moving parts. It means scalability at the onset. It means flexibility to change when you need to adapt down the road. Because instead of constantly layering on new APIs and new documentation every time you grow, you've got a single flexible GraphQL layer that evolves with you. And why, if GraphQL is so great, isn't everyone running towards it? Well, there are cases a well-tuned REST API might make more sense. Also, the initial setup of GraphQL is not out of the box like an API. And developer knowledge of working with GraphQL might require some ramp up, more so than traditional APIs. Once you're past that initial hurdle, it's a great option to have in your toolkit. So APIs aren't going away even when you use GraphQL, but the key is that your coordination between front end and back end is dramatically simplified in the places where it matters most. That said, for all its long-term benefits, GraphQL is worth considering. The smart move is making careful architecture choices based on what's best for your foundation and not blindly defaulting to one method for everything. Making smart, scalable architectural decisions like choosing GraphQL early on where it fits, when you can, are important, and where someone like me can help. If you're thinking about how to build a stack that scales with your ambition and not against it, let's definitely talk. Thanks for walking with me today, and I'll see you next time on Walk with Neil.